Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Speak to Transform. You are in for a treat today. Do you know someone in your life, or maybe you, who have gone through an abortion, a termination of a pregnancy that was maybe forced upon you, or a decision where you felt like there was no other decision, and at the end of the day, you didn't realize how much pain or hurt it may cause you, even though it may have been an innocent decision. Well, I want to ask you to tune in today as I interview a very special guest today who has a story to tell that is one of hope, of healing, and wholeness, and is one of being able to bring a place of purpose out of pain. And so I want to introduce you to my friend Mirtha. I'm just introduced you right now. Mirtha Coronel is a sexual responsibility educator, author, public speaker, and coach. She's dedicated to guiding individuals through a holistic approach to healing. A wife and a mother of three, she draws from personal experience, training, and a love for biblical truths. Through her writing and speaking, Mirtha empowers others to live purposeful, authentic, and God honoring lives. She recently published a meditative guide, a devotional to healing from the aftermath of abortion called Abortion Hurts. Healing is possible. It's now available on Amazon and Kindle. Please help me welcome to the stage, Mirtha. Hello, Mirtha.
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I I am so well, but I want to first of all say congratulations on getting your book published. What a journey, I am sure, but what an accomplishment.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have to say this, praise the Lord.
Yes, it is. It is to the glory of God. Well, I would love it if you would share, first of all, tell us a little bit about how did you come to write this book? And I'm sure some of your journey will come out in that, but tell me a little bit about why you wrote this book and who is it for?
All right. So I wrote this book because I recognized in talking to different women in different stages of life who had experienced an abortion had never actually talked about it until it came up in conversation with us or until they heard aspects of my abortion experience and my testimony where they were actually able to have someone to talk to. And so I decided that I needed to help women activate their voice. The truth is that abortion hurts, as the title says, and healing is possible. And it's in that healing that we're actually able to find our voice and step into what God has for us.
Wow. So I can just hear some people right now listening who may feel like, what do you mean abortion hurts? You're just getting rid of a blob of tissue. It's just a surgery. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so certainly for some women that experience an abortion, they have no. It's the best decision that they've ever made. I've talked to women that feel that way. Absolutely, um, but there is. Well, here, let me just start right here. Let me start with this. Half of unintended pregnancies, half of unintended pregnancies end in abortion. Most of those pregnancies that end in abortion have some secrecy around it.
Hmm.
And that secrecy doesn't give space for an individual that's gone through an abortion to actually process those feelings. And so
Mm.
when I say abortion hurts, it actually physically hurts your body. Like the actual process and procedure physically hurts, and the physical pain can be days, weeks, months, and in extreme cases it can actually go on for years, the physical aspect of it.
Mm.
But we also know that there is a mental pain that occurs as well. And that mental pain, that mental hurt happens when the mind is kind of split between a decision that they made or an action that we took and our values, or there's some sort of conflict, where there's a second guess or a doubt, and it's called cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
So that um, it impacts our mental health. And then there's the heart aspect of it. So for many people going into an abortion, depending on what stage they are and depending on their belief system, yeah, it's just tissue. I'm just getting rid of stuff, until you actually hear the heartbeat, or until you actually are educated, which was my case, where I learned the development of the human life form, and that it does actually begin at fertilization. A baby's heartbeat can be detected at just 22 days of gestation. Most
Wow.
women don't even know they're pregnant in the first 22
That's
days.
right.
But
That's right.
so by the time they find out, into the 23rd day, the 24th
Yeah.
day, like 4 weeks, like there's already a heartbeat.
Wow.
So the emotional hurt, the emotional pain when you realize that the life of your baby was taken at your own hand. So there's the emotional aspect of it. And then there's the relational hurt. And what do I mean by that? So in my particular case, I kept the pregnancy hidden from my parents and hidden even from my best friends. I didn't talk to anybody about it except the father of the baby and the doctor, and the medical staff that I had to deal with. And so there was, it put a strain on my relationship with my parents, because I was, again, keeping something hidden from them, and I was struggling. So it put me in this place of isolation, and put me in a place of kind of being standoffish with my loving and caring parents. And so it strained that relationship. But I'll tell you, years later, after being married, it put a strain on a relationship on my marriage that had nothing to do with those pregnancies or
Wow.
those abortions. Because here's reality. Here was a reality check for me. I was pregnant with my third child, the first of my husband, and the first child that was born to me. And we went to see the doctor. And it's normal practice, for a new pregnant mom to fill out forms and, asking about your health, asking if you've been pregnant before, asking if you've lost a baby, if you've had an abortion. And so here I was having to fill this form out in front of my husband, who only knew about one of the abortions, because I was too ashamed to tell him about the second abortion. But because my baby that was in my wombs, it had to do with her health, I needed to fill out the form out accurately. And so now it caused a discomfort in that moment, and for days and weeks afterwards, when I had to come clean, in front of my husband, and tell him that I wasn't completely honest with you about this, and here's why. So it hurts relationships as well. And then the last thing I want to highlight in terms of abortion hurting is it hurts our soul. Because the truth of the matter is that every single human being, was made in the image of God. And each one of us has a plan and purpose. Like God has a plan and purpose for our lives. And the word of the Lord says that we were made in the image of God, meaning that we carry an aspect of Him, like His Spirit in us. And our soul is constantly wanting to connect with that Spirit of God, like constantly wanting to connect with, regardless of our belief systems. Like even atheists, the Spirit of the Lord is still in them and still wants to connect, but because they don't understand it in their mind, or they don't understand it in their heart, or they reject it completely, they fill they look for how to fill that gap and how to respond. And so when we commit an act of hurt against ourselves, so when we do something that will affect the health of our heart, our mind, our body, our soul, our relationships, it it grieves us, but it also grieves the heart of God. And so it ends up hurting our soul.
Wow, wow. I love what you just said there in terms of how it actually the different layers, the different places that it can hurt. And when you talked about, be having to keep it from your parents, keep it from your husband, and just the as years later, how it follows you in that regard and how a part of your soul is is closed off, right? Because of the secret, because of the shame sometimes that people feel, or confusion, or whatever it is, or the pain. So thank you for unpacking that. That is really powerful. So I have a few questions that have come up as you were talking. And first of all, I just want to say thank you for your vulnerability, for sharing your story, for writing your story, but also writing place for women and men to go to be able to receive healing, to be able to see what's possible, but even to become aware of where they may be hurt, or where abortion, the act of abortion or the decision to abort a child may have impacted their life today that they may not even be aware of. I mean, I'm just thinking of, I have a few friends I know personally who didn't really start to deal with that decision until much later in life, like 50s, 60s, and looking back at how it impacted their life over the years. But I was one of the questions I had for you was, what was it about, what shifted for you in terms of, okay, looking at the decision you made, why you felt you need to keep it from your parents, and then later on realizing that, oh, there's a baby. Was there a faith journey involved in this, or how did you come to this understanding, and how did you start your journey? Were you a person of faith back then, or tell us a little bit about that, because we are speaking in the context here of the value of life and how it shifted for you.
Yeah. I'm going to start by saying this. I was pro-choice until I made the choice that hurt me.
Wow. Wow. Okay, I just want to pause right there. That is such a powerful statement. You were pro-choice until you made the choice. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. And so what happened, and I'm going to get to the faith aspect of it, because I wasn't a believer at the time that I made the decision. And I'm just going to pause on that and just add this. There are many people who are of the faith and make the decision to abort, and it too strains their relationship with God. But there's healing in that as well. Okay, so I, oh my. So what happened for me was something that isn't talked about a lot. And that is how I felt on the train ride home after the abortion. How I felt, actually, I'm going to back it up. How I felt actually going through the procedure
Mhm.
and hearing, this is a little bit graphic, but hearing the sounds of this baby being like sucked out of me, literally vacuumed out of me. And how I felt on the journey home, how I felt about the baby a week later, a year later. Because what happened for me in terms of recognizing that it was actually a human, it too came in different layers as well.
Mhm.
So even though I started to recognize that it was a human, I still didn't understand the sanctity of life part. That came after. So what happened in my case, it doesn't happen to everybody that experiences an abortion, but it did happen in my case, is that the thought of the baby was always present in my life.
Mm.
So a year after I would have been due to deliver this baby, I was thinking my baby would be 1 years old today or around this time of the year. When I would see children who were this around the same age that my child would be, starting kindergarten, graduating from grade 8, going into
Wow.
high school, I would be brought back to that place of my
Wow.
baby would be going into applying for university right now.
Wow.
And so there was that aspect of it. But it wasn't until I was 30 years old. Now, I think I left this out. I was 14 years old when I had my first abortion. I did it, I mentioned, without my parents' knowledge or consent, which is a red flag. And I came from a loving household. So it wasn't
Mhm.
that I was afraid that I was
S So
going
was
to
it
be killed.
needed? So it wasn't needed though, in order for you, or was it?
That's a good question.
Mhm.
When you don't seek wise counsel from those that love you, you're going to believe the story that the culture has painted for you.
Mm.
You're going to believe the story that your brain is telling you. Because in my case, it was telling me I'm never going to be able to earn a decent income. My brain was telling me all kinds of stories.
Yeah.
And I do want to raise this point. Again, my parents loved me. I never felt unloved. However, I also obviously didn't feel that I could come to them with this. So that's what's so important. And part of the work I do as a sexual responsibility educator is to talk to parents and teach parents how to talk to their children and
Mhm.
youth about all of these important matters so that you become that first point of contact when these life issues come up, because they will.
Yeah.
So then back to the faith aspect of it, at age 30 is when I came into a relationship with the man who saved my life. I call him now, I like to call him Messiah Yeshua, Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one, the one who came to save. And it was in actually reading the scriptures that I
Mm.
started to discover, that he knit me together in my mother's womb. He knits every baby together in his mother's womb. I made you you're fearfully and wonderfully made, like every single baby. And as I was going through just the scriptures and just discovering God's love for all of humanity, but right from the point, like no, the scriptures actually say from the foundations of the earth, my thoughts were on you. And it just began to just shift things for me as it related to really understanding the importance of choosing life all around.
Wow. Wow. So, uh, this is not often talked about for young girls who have made that decision, who have been, like you talked about, believed a certain way, that this is the only way, but also the aftermath of it. Would you say at that time, was there anything offered to you after you went through the abortion by the people who were in the clinic, whatever, anything offered to you in terms of counseling or grief counseling or lost or post-abortion counseling, anything like that? Or was it even suggested, or did they even say, you might feel this, or you might find yourself, was any of that part of the conversation?
Lisa, that's a great question. And the answer is no. There was no counseling provided. In fact, and this is part of the reason that I wrote the book, and this is part of the reason that I'm intentional about talking about this subject, and even the correlation between being sexually responsible, is that society has painted such a narrow image of the consequences that occur when we make a decision. Like it's just such a narrow view, and
Mhm.
it's not true because we haven't given everybody the full story. I believe
Mm.
if someone said to me, because I did actually go to my guidance counselor who counseled me to go to the clinic and have an abortion. But if I would have been informed and said, "Hey, here it is, Mirtha. If you choose an abortion today, this is what you may experience
Mhm.
tomorrow, a year from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now." And like you mentioned, I've talked to women that is 40 years from now,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Versus Mirtha, if you choose to keep your baby today, here's how you're going to feel tomorrow,
Yeah.
1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from
Wow.
now, 40 years from now. Then I would be able to truly make an informed decision and really weigh it out.
Mhm. Wow. Yes, I love that. I mean, I could just feel the life on that second part in terms of helping people to see the possibility of the different kind of feeling that they would have with a life choice, even being able to lay it out like that. Wow. I just think this is such an important topic. And let me know how you feel or how you have seen in the last number of years. There seems to be more of the ability to even have these kind of conversations, whereas I don't know, maybe even 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it was like, "No, we can't talk about this," and we definitely not can't talk about post-abortion, the need for post-abortion healing, because there was so much political energy around it. There's so much other things around it to keep people in a place of silence or even keep people in a place of deception, really. So, have you noticed that there has been more of an openness to have these kind of conversations?
That's a good question. I'm going to answer it in two parts. When I look at what's happening in the Canadian landscape, I would say that the conversation is still difficult to have.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I speak, so engaging and meeting people and engaging in conversations, it's easy for me. This topic is not easy. And it's not that it's not easy for me, it's not easy for the recipients.
Yeah.
Like when I even just sharing about the book that I wrote and
Yeah.
sharing copies of it, just the hesitation and the reservation to the whole issue of it. Um, and so I would say we're not there yet in Canada. However, I have because I'm connected very much like with the USA, and I could say that yes, and particularly in the last probably 24 months or so, I've seen an increase of the openness to share the scientific data, because thanks to advancements in technology, we can actually see we can actually see the baby's heartbeat at 22 days. Like I just watched a video about it. It blew me away. We can actually see it now thanks to technology.
Mhm.
Thanks to obviously the social media and just freedom of speech, we're able to share the other side of the story.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing that people are more open to having a conversation about what abortion really is, and that it hurts, and that there is a need for post-abortive care and support and counseling.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that. You're right. So we are both in Canada for those who are tuning in today from the United States. Both Mirtha and I live in Canada. And yes, the landscape is a little bit different here politically. And I would say that well, first of all, I would say that the decision in the United States, with the help of course, Trump, although he wasn't in power at the time, that was an initiative. The Roe versus Wade overturning of that was monumental. Was just monumental in terms of shifting this whole area and even changing people's mindset and understanding. The other thing is what, of course, President Trump just got reelected here in the United States, and one of the first things he did was he pardoned people who were put in jail for simply standing outside of an abortion clinic and praying. Like, that should not be a crime. But yet it was a crime. And so he recognized that this was an injustice. But the other thing he did was he spoke to a pro-life march group. And he's on record to say he's the only president that ever was in person at one of these marches to support the pro-life movement. Now, there's a misnomer, because a lot of people say, well, if you're pro-life, then you're taking away choice. No, we're not taking away choice. We believe in choice, but you need to have an informed choice, right? It's a choice of understanding what exactly are you doing, and how you, because we can see how certain ways of marketing something can cause people to be almost anesthetized or numbed to a subject matter, because they see it from this perspective when really this is the truth. And so for me and you who have come into this understanding, it is that human life starts at conception. Human life is a gift of God and is not something that we tamper with, because that is taking a human life, and that is not our place. It's murder. Let's just call it what it is, right? But at the same time, because of so many people like yourself even, who were lied to, who were persuaded by people who you trusted and advised to do something, you innocently believed, and then it was not until later on. And this is what happens a lot. Maybe can you give me some statistics, if you know them off the top of your head? If you don't, that's okay. But I know that some of the argument is around this, and not that we're going to get into all of the arguments, because it's not what the purpose of this interview is. It really is to help point people to a place of, well, for one, to become aware that abortion does hurt, and it shows up in different ways. And if you identify, if you relate to anything that Mirtha has said in terms of some of the hurts, then we want to encourage you to seek out help and to seek out healing. And her book is a great place to start. It is a 31-day start to healing, to your healing and spiritual growth. And it is saying healing is possible, that you can heal from that. But we also recognize that there's many people who still are in the mindset that abortion is, the vast number of children who are aborted are children who were conceived through rape or through some act like that. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I can. So there are extreme circumstances, right? One of the hardest questions that I got asked when I started going down this path was dealing with that issue specifically. And if I can go into that just very
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
okay, briefly. So it was actually, I was teaching a group of women, and it was an optional course, it's like a module for me to teach to them on abortion. So at the end of the lesson, one of the students asked this question. She said to me, Mirtha, the war in Israel had just happened. And before I say anything more, I know that I'm not necessarily going to gain friends by the answers that I give on this subject. And I understand that I may lose some along the way, but I'm here to speak the truth as it relates to life. So she asked me, what about those young girls that are being violated by these, I'm going to call them terrorists, which is what they were and are. And now they're pregnant with this big, is that not a case for abortion?
Mm.
Hard. But when I, because I choose to look at things from a biblical lens, the answer is that baby deserves life. And the truth of the matter is, if that child who was abused aborts her baby, it does not negate the trauma or the horror that
Mhm.
that child experienced.
Yeah.
It actually now amplifies it. It makes a horrible, unthinkable situation that much worse.
Yeah.
Um, Specifically about the statistics, those types of situations where you hear of cases of rape or incestual pregnancies, they represent less than 5% of the unintended abortions that pregnancies that end in abortion. It's less than 5%. So the 95% is for other reasons than those extreme cases. And that's where, for me, it comes back to, because when I started looking at this abortion issue, I started to like ask the questions, like, what's at the root of this? Like, what is driving this?
Yeah.
And when I look around a culture that hypersexualizes all of us, adults too, but our children, and promotes a lifestyle that says, hey, if you feel like it, go for it. And you end up with people, like in my situation, 14 years old and pregnant.
Yeah.
Now what? What if we started to what if we started to do our part to honor our bodies, so
Mhm.
that babies that are conceived in the safety, and I call it safety, because the ones
Mhm.
that are conceived inside of a lifelong loving marriage have a higher chance of being birthed
Mhm.
naturally, like given they get a higher chance of life
Yeah.
than those that were not, and so it comes back to the decisions that we make. Like, our choice begins with what we choose to do with our body and how we choose to engage with others intimately or
It's so
not.
good. Yeah, that's a great perspective to put on it, making the choice way back here and then being able to walk, because all of life has consequences, right, with our choices, and so we need to be willing to look at those. And I know I've heard somewhere, I don't know the exact stats off the top of my head, but I know that there, because of the conditioning around this subject of abortion, there has now been an open door for it to be just a convenience, just a convenient thing. So that, for example, there's a number of women who are professional women and married and maybe have children already. And they decide, you know what, I can't afford to have another child because I have my career I need to go on. And so it becomes this form of birth control, or this form of controlling, the circumstances of their life in that regard. And so this is where it comes back to, okay, what exactly are we doing? And there's many reasons that we can bring in there, but ultimately it's a life, it's a human life. And the ultimate question is, do we have the right to kill a human life for our own gain, for our own, right? And
Yeah,
so
for our own
mhm,
convenience.
convenience.
And if we think about it, wow, like it is, it hurts me to even think about it.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about the healing part, because I think this is really important, is to understand the healing. Now, what was some of the, maybe just give us, in the time that we have here, a few things that where you began to understand. You talked about the journey after having your first one, and the reminders. What was kind of the tipping point for you to kind of go full head on into healing in this area?
Well, there were a few steps in the way. I would say the tipping point was me um, asking the Lord to reveal to me the things that were hindering love. And because God is love, I was basically asking Him, God, reveal
Mm,
to me the things that are hindering like me growing in relationship with you, me growing in intimacy with you.
Yeah.
And that's where he pulled me in a little closer and started to show me and unpack for me how deep the wounds related to abortion were.
Mm.
But one of the ways he did it, because he's such a God who disrupts our lives, he's such a disruptor, but his
He is.
disruptions are always good. So it was
That's right.
actually at one of my first speaking events. I was speaking to I was invited to speak at a youth group, like to a youth group, 120 kids, whatever it was. And I had prepared my notes based on the subject that they had given me. And, it was basically like how difficult it is to live in today's society following godly principles because of what's going on in culture. So I was like, okay, great. I'm going to talk about this from a 10 commandments perspective. Now, I was a new believer. It
Mhm.
made sense at the time, but I went up, I opened my mouth to speak when suddenly I just felt the presence of God come in and fully take over, because that's what I had been praying and fasting for. I was praying and fasting that God would use my voice and that it would be his message coming forth, not mine.
Mhm.
And for the first time, I actually, in a public setting, opened up and went through my testimony, the experience, like what happened to me as a child that led to, me being hypersexualized, that led to the abortion, that led to the pregnancy, that led to the abortion. And it was in such an eye-opening way for me to actually be able to see the depth of what I was feeling in my heart and the thoughts that were going through my brain. And that alone was the pivotal point to healing. And then after that, the Lord said, "Okay, come closer. We're going to sit and talk about this. We're going to do some things to help
Mhm.
you receive your full healing." And I'm going to be completely transparent. It was about a 3-year process
Mhm.
because there were many, many, many layers.
Yeah.
you know and so that the book, Abortion Hurts, Healing is Possible, 31 days start to your healing and spiritual growth. You can receive your full healing from abortion through this book, but our deeper healing as individuals and our spiritual growth is ongoing.
Right. Ongoing. That's so good. Yes. So if someone is listening today and they wanted to get a copy of this book or for themselves or for someone in their life, where can they find it?
They can find it on Amazon and Kindle, and depending on when you're watching this video, it may also be available on Audible as well.
Fantastic. So good. Well, I am so thankful for you. I'm so thankful for you having the courage to share your story because I know that, yes, many people will be healed and engage with healing, but also be able to embrace the healing that they need just by hearing your story and find the courage in themselves and even begin to become aware of how they may need healing, even though they may not be aware of it beforehand. So I just want to thank you again for your transparency, for your courage, and for your desire to help others along the journey. Any last words that you want to leave with our listeners today?
I am going to say this. Um, in a society where, for many of us, we've been conditioned to stay quiet about our genuine experiences or belief systems on sensitive subjects such as abortion, I want to encourage you that if you went through it and are going through a healing and recognize that you need healing or are going through a healing process, but if you find yourself in a situation where you know someone is going to make the same decision that you did, which you now know that hurt you, please open up your mouth and speak forth truth. Give them a full perspective of the decision that they are contemplating.
So good, so good. Thank you so much, Mirtha, for coming on today. What a
Thank you,
great
Lisa.
discussion. Yeah, so proud of you and so excited. And if you want to hire, if you need a speaker at an event, contact Mirtha because she is more than willing to come and share her story, but also to be able to share and to be able to help people in this journey of healing and to help give them some direction in this. This is not just something she wrote a book on. She lives this. This is what she does. She prays for people, she speaks, she is an advocate for those who have lost their voice. So I want to encourage you to seek her out. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you found value from this episode today, from this interview, please do like and share, subscribe, and share it with someone in your world that you know need to hear this. And by all means, go and pick up a copy of the book. Even if you don't need it right now, you just to have it on hand to give to someone that you may meet who needs it down the road, because I guarantee you will meet someone, and it's a great resource to get into their hands. And we just thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you again, Mirtha. All
Thank
the
you.
blessings. You are so welcome. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time. As you're listening today, you may have felt prompted to say, I want to become a much better speaker. I want to be able to speak with confidence, clarity, and transformational impact. I want to invite you to check out the link in the comments below, wherever you're listening to this. Your voice is an instrument of transformation and needs to be heard. So let it be heard.